Today's concert, we welcome British violinist Frey Creech back to the ASA for a program of music for solo violin. Freya grew up in Ireland, studying violin with her Canadian-British mother, later studying at the Royal Academy of Music in London. She completed performance degrees at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria, and the Hochschule für Musik in Hanover, Germany. And in 2019, she moved to Tucson, where she joined True Concord Voices and Orchestra and performed a solo recital that year at the ASA, and subsequently presented a different ASA concert with her violist friend, Hannah Rose Nicholas. During the pandemic, Freya relocated to Washington, D.C., but she is back in Tucson this month to perform with True Concord and to present today's concert at the ASA. Please join me in welcoming Frey Creech.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you all so much for coming out today. This is a special moment for me. It's my first solo performance back after these last 2 years. In fact, Leslie and I were reminiscing about the last time I was here was February 2020. That was one of my last concerts before everything shut down. So I'm just thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be back, to be playing for real people in person, not just through a screen. And I know it looks a bit different with masks, but I'll take it. Just a note about that. I will stay masked. I would love to take my mask off. But as Jackie mentioned, I'm playing with True Concord this week, and part of that is that we signed a health and safety agreement that we all agreed to stay masked indoors, and so that's why I'm choosing to keep my mask on, and I appreciate your acceptance of that, and I hope it doesn't take away from my performance. So I'm going to present a varied and I hope exciting performance of solo violin music today. A couple of years ago, I started to get really interested in solo violin and what the violin by itself could do in a concert, just on stage by itself. No piano, no string quartet, no orchestra, just the violin. That led me to record a couple of albums of solo violin music, which I'll play some selections of for you today. But I'm going to start with Telemann. Telemann, I feel, is such an underrated, beautiful composer, and he wrote 12 fantasias for solo violin. I'm going to play the third of these 12. It's in F minor. Telemann was a self-taught violinist. He actually wrote these fantasias for himself to practice, to get better at the violin. I guess he didn't have, YouTube tutorials and things like that, so he just composed pieces for himself to play. And that's what these fantasias are. They're really beautiful. It's in 4 short movements, slow, fast, slow, fast. And I hope you enjoy it. such beautiful music, such a joy to play that. The last couple of years were tough for everyone, I think, and very tough for musicians. With nothing to do, no work, no concerts, empty diaries. I think many of us looked around for projects, looked for things to keep busy. And I came across these solo 8 portraits for violin by an American composer called Virgil Thomson. And I started practicing them, and I thought, oh, these are really interesting pieces of music. I can't perform them, but I would like to record them. And I kind of had this crazy idea, maybe I could record them from home in my living room. So I did it. I did it last summer in Tucson, Arizona, during the summer, the height of summer in July. I turned my air conditioning off because it was too noisy. And I went into my living room, I hung up blankets over the windows, I kind of created a makeshift recording studio. I bought a little microphone, plugged it into my computer, and I just recorded a bunch of material, and then I kind of sent all of that material off to a couple of recording engineers who I'd worked with before, and they turned it into an album. So that's what I have. If you're interested, if you like the music, I brought some CDs with me in case anyone is interested in buying one. So they're really unique pieces of music. Each one is totally different. Virgil Thomson decided to create musical portraits of his friends, his colleagues, his acquaintances, much like as a sitter will pose for a painter who's painting their portrait. Virgil Thomson would ask his friends to sit for him, and he would sketch out the musical portrait of that person. It's such a kind of interesting way of composing music. It would take about an hour to write each one, or until he ran out of manuscript paper, whichever came first. And then he might make a couple of revisions the next day, but he didn't work with a piano. He just worked from his head and just sketched out the musical idea that person inspired within him, which is it's fascinating. So I'm going to play a selection of these. I'm going to play about 4. The first one was inspired by Virgil's dear friend Gertrude Stein. They collaborated together a number of times. He wrote an opera together with Stein, which you might have heard of. And this one was the only one written not with Stein posing in front of him. This is Gertrude Stein as a young girl when he didn't know her. And I find it to be very tender, very beautiful, very touching. It gives you an idea of their friendship and how dear that friendship was to him. I'll tell you about each one as I go through. Let's start with the Stein. by the way, all of these portraits, these ones for violin, were written in about 1928, and at that point, Virgil Thomson was living in Paris. So you can imagine 1920s Paris, Thomson, Gertrude Stein, all the artists, you can imagine just how inspired he was. So the next one I'm going to play is it's called Georg Huguenot. He was a poet, and Thomson and Stein kind of welcomed him into their inner circle, elite inner circle of artists. I think that Thomson really admired his poems, and particularly his epics, his long, really long poems and long sentences. And so I think you can hear that in his portrait. Georg Huguenot also had a military training, so I think that Thomson took elements, and you might hear elements of kind of military and strict rhythms mixed with this kind of artistic flair. So I hope you like it. They're just short sketches, but they really pack a punch, I find. So the next one is based on Cliquet Pleyel, who was another composer, a contemporary of Virgil Thomson. And he was an interesting man. He was always very dissatisfied with his work. There are stories about him throwing his manuscripts on the fire. And so he's very erratic, and I think you can hear that in his portrait. He was also married to a soprano, and they had a very turbulent marriage. I think the wife, if not both of them, were alcoholics. And there are stories of Thomson and Gertrude Stein going over to their house for dinner and just erupting in huge fights and arguments. So I'm only playing the husband's side of the story. So if you want to hear the wife's side, you'll have to buy the CD. I'm not sure who the winner of that argument was. But so the last one I'm going to play today is my personal favorite. It's a portrait of Mrs. Chester Whitten Lassell, who was a fellow American. She was actually one of Thomson's financial sponsors. So he was very, very grateful to her. It's clear that he had a place in her family. He cared for her whole family. He spent long periods of time with them, and he very much appreciated her help and support of him, which allowed him to basically write this kind of music, to compose as he wanted to, with such freedom, with no kind of compositional rule, no strict rules tying him. He could just do whatever he wanted. And I think that this appreciation is very clear in this portrait. It's very beautiful, it's quite emotional, and it feels very intimate and very personal. So I hope you like it. Thank you. That was fun. That was the first time I've been able to play them live because I've only recorded them. So thank you for exploring those with me in person. That was really fun. So in the end, what is there except Bach? I had to play some Bach today. I'm going to play one of my favorite movements. I say that about every movement of Bach, but this really is one of my favorites. It's the Largo from the C major solo violin sonata, and it's a very beautiful piece of music. It takes its time, it meanders around and wanders around all these different kind of keys and harmonies, but it never stops moving, and that's something that is very meaningful to me, and I think it probably is meaningful for a lot of us right now. The fact that you can just take your time and go where you want to go, but never stop moving. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to return to some older music for me. It's music from the first album I recorded, and I don't know if anyone was here at my first recital that I gave at the ASA 2 years ago, I think in 2019. I performed a whole program of works by a composer called Sonia Eckhardt-Gramatté. She was a Russian composer, actually lived at about the same time as Virgil Thomson, and they might have come into contact in Paris because she spent lots of time in Paris in the 20s. So I thought it would be interesting to put them next to each other in the same concert. She was a very interesting composer. She survived both world wars in Europe, living in Vienna and in Germany. She eventually emigrated to Canada, where she lived until about 1971. She wrote 10 caprices for solo violin, and it's kind of similar to the Virgil Thomsons. These were quick sketches. She would be inspired by little things in her everyday life, people or animals or colors or dancers, and she would just quickly sketch out the musical idea that was inspired within her. So they're very spontaneous, unique pieces of work. I'm going to play 3. The first one is called El Pajarito, or The Little Bird. And she was inspired by a bird that she saw trapped in a cage. And to her, it seemed like the bird was fighting to be free and longing for its freedom. And I'll let you decide by the end of the caprice if you think that the bird escaped. like to imagine it's a happy ending. So the next one, completely different. She wrote it while she was on the island of Mallorca, and it's called La Isla de Oro, and it was inspired by a flamenco dancer who she watched dancing, so you can just see the colors and the dress and the guitar playing. In fact, sometimes she writes for the violin to play like a guitar, kind of strumming, and it's very evocative of that mood and that character. Hope you like it. Thank you. The last one I'm going to play is number 1 in the set, actually. It's called Die Kranke und die Uhr in German. It means the sick and the clock. And I guess because of the last couple of years, this one has become even more kind of poignant for me. I think we've all become so aware of the time that we have, and I'm sure our relationships to sickness, and it means something different maybe than it did a couple of years ago. To me, anyway, it does. Sonia wrote this while she was at the bedside of a sick friend, with the clock ticking ominously in the background. Hope you like it. So I have just one more thing to play for you, but again, before I do that, I just wanted to thank you so much again. This has been such a thrill, so great for me. I'm so happy to play in person for real people again. Thank you so much to Leslie for having me back. It really means so much. Thank you. When Leslie and I were communicating about what program I would play, I said if I felt brave that day, I would play the Allegro from the same Bach sonata that I played the Largo from. I don't know if it's bravery or if it's just some kind of masochism or something, but I want to do it. I want to do it. The last time I played this movement was actually for my master's exam in 2018. And it might not be as fast as it was back then, but I will enjoy it nonetheless. Thank you so much.